Good afternoon, evening, I should say, Safe Space family. And thank you for coming by once again. Safe Space, for those of you that have never been here, is a place of exchanging ideas. It's a place of, as we evolve, telling stories. The stories that we have told range from everything that you can imagine, from a mother losing her child and explaining how God was her hope after her daughter's murder and dismemberment and being missing for 70 days before her remains were found, to stories of how to pray, teaching us exactly what it is that we're supposed to do in our prayers in soliciting the throne of God, to talking about debilitating anxiety and how the tools that our Father has given us here on earth, as well as supping with Him, put you in a place of being able to function and live a full God-filled life. To the story that we have tonight, I am so proud and elated to have this wonderful guest that we have tonight on Safe Space. Her name is Dr. Joanne Chestnut. Welcome, Dr. Chestnut.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Dr. Chestnut has a wonderful testimony. She's first and foremost is a mother, a wife, a grandmother, a medical professional, and she is an author of this wonderful book. Let's put it closer so you all can see it. Let's get my centering right. The book is available on Amazon. It is simply called Birds with Broken Wings Still Fly, Overcoming Trauma. First and foremost, I have to tell you that I received the book and I didn't read it right away, but I read it on Friday evening, or so I thought. I was going to read so much of it and then stop. I read the entire book. The book is riveting. It is definitely a page turner. And I'm not saying this because you're here. I read the book in one setting. I just could not put it down. I kept reading and reading and reading, and it was dead silence in my house. I was here alone, and I just kept reading and reading and reading. And to see where you began, what you went through, and where God has stationed you in life now, and you're not finished, is a testament to why I tell the stories that I tell on Safe Space. And it's simply to convey to people through stories that God has no preference of person. There's no big me and little you or anything like that. And what He does for one, He will do for another. If you just simply take the steps, He will put His super on your natural, and you will not believe what you can come through. So where we're going to start is wherever you want to start. She does a wonderful whole wellness conference that we want you to talk about. We want you to talk about your book, your other ministries, and what your future plans are, because you are full just because of what you've lived through. She's also, and I'm going to do this spoiler before she begins to talk, is a recipient of a kidney less than a year ago. So when I met her and she told me she'd had a transplant in January of 2024, I couldn't believe it. It just, I didn't know what my perception of someone should look like, or be in a physical state that would have that type of transplant, but not with all that she did a conference that year. So you began wherever you like to in your story and tell us about what you'd like to, the audience of Safe Space, to know, but please touch on this.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I just want to make a little clarification. It was January 2023 that I had my
transplant. I thought it was
transplant.
24.
Yes, it's 23. So thank you for that. Nonetheless, it's still less than 2 years. And so I'll start out by giving God the glory. My glory is His story. My history is His story. So I just want to glorify God in all of that, because I could do none of what I've done without Him and without my faith in Him. As far as I'll start with the book and go back. Okay. So the book, I wrote the book after going through some challenges. I don't want to give all of it away, but going through some challenges. I was newly married, and I had been suffering with the kidney disease for quite a long time, 19 years to be exact. But I will tell you this, in the 19 years that I had the kidney disease, what happened to me was, it wasn't just that I wasn't taking care of myself. I went to New Orleans in 2004 with a girl group, and someone put a date rape drug in a drink that I consumed. and I almost didn't make it back home, but that's what triggered the kidney disease. That's how I got it. So I had kidney and liver disease at the same time. At one time, my liver was failing as well as my kidney. Just so happened the medications that they gave me was able to help me with my liver in recovery. And the liver is pretty good about regenerating itself.
Mm-hmm.
However, the kidney kept the sequelae and it kept it, the disease process continued with the kidney. So I went from stage 1 to stage 5. What I do want to say is this.
Never.
And all those years, from the time they told me that I was stage 5, which was in 2010, they told me that you're in stage 5 now, and it's going to be pretty soon. You'll start to see the changes in your body, and ultimately, if you don't get a transplant, you're going to need to be on dialysis. Well, because I had the problems with my liver, they had told me once before, that I could not get a kidney transplant without getting a kidney and a liver. Went to a doctor. The doctor fought that and said, no, your kidney is healed. Your liver is healed. They are wrong. And he fought with me, gave them paperwork to show them, did a biopsy on my liver, and told them, no, she needs to be on this transplant, because they fought me and did not let me on the kidney transplant list for 2.5 years, because they were saying the liver being damaged was too much of a risk. Got through that and then ended up on the list for a kidney. And the whole time that I've ever had kidney disease, I dreamed one night, and God had showed me that I was in a dialysis center, and he was showing me, like, this will never be you. You'll never be here. So for years, I always decreed and declared to anyone I would talk to, I would say, I'm going to get a kidney because I'm never going to be on dialysis, because God has already showed it to me. So when I wrote that book after the transplant. Now, I started it before the transplant, but after I got the transplant, 5.5 years on the list, what happened was I was on the list and I was getting worse. So they said that you'd likely get the transplant in 3 to 5 years. Most people get a kidney. Well, it was 5 years and some change, and I had not gotten a kidney. But I was getting darker. I was getting sicker. I never looked like what I was going through. I would show up at work just like you see me now. And I would show up there, and I would do what it was that thus saith the Lord, until I went to my husband one day and said, we're going to have to do something, because I'm getting sicker. And as a medical professional, I knew that I couldn't make this work myself. However, what I said to my husband, I said, I'm still believing God, though. I still believe that I will never see a transplant center. So what I'm going to, a dialysis center. So what I'm going to do is talk to my doctor, and I'll do dialysis at home, because I believe, God, that I should never go there. So I started getting prepped for dialysis at home. And on the week that I was supposed to go for my final consultation, just before getting the surgery to get the dialysis at home, I got a kidney.
So in 19 years of having kidney disease and it progressing from stage 1, just for clarification, to stage 5, you never had dialysis?
Never had dialysis, and never looked like the picture of someone. Shelby, I'll tell you this. I used to go to the transplant meetings, and you have to go through all of this stuff. They make you do, all kinds of testing, psychological testing. You have to see the social worker to make sure you're going to have a support system there for you. You have to get tested for HIV and all this stuff year after year. And then they put you in this room with all these people who need a kidney, and they're sick. And it would depress me, and I would just struggle, because here I was looking like this. And I would go in these rooms, and these people they've all been on dialysis, or they're waiting for a kidney, or been on dialysis and had it fail, and now they're sick again, and I would be like, I can't look at I feel so bad. I can't look at this, because it's not my future.
And your story, it wasn't what you were living, which I have never heard of someone with kidney disease that long and it progressing from stage to stage and being on a transplant list that did not receive dialysis. It sounds unreal, but it's a testament to the strength and the power of our Father if we have that level of faith.
Yes.
Because he said to the woman with the issue of blood, you've been healed according to the measure of your faith.
Absolutely. And not to withstand this, because I'm human, right? And I have human emotions. Mm-hmm. So there was times when I did question God. There was times when I did have those moments where I just said, I can't do this anymore. The day that I got the transplant, the actual day that I got my kidney, it was my father who passed away. It was his birthday. And I had actually stayed in bed all day because I was so sick. And sometimes I was having the opportunity to wait at work from home during these times. And I would go into this particular clinic, and I had planned to go into the clinic. But I was so sick that I told my husband I was going to work because I really didn't want him to know how sick I was getting. So when he would leave, I would sometimes get back into bed because I was really just too weak. But I would get up like I was getting up with him. And he'd say, "You going in?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going." Because I just didn't want him to have the fear that I had seen on my mom's face before she passed away while I was well into the kidney disease. So I would just tell him like I'm going, and many days I did, but this day I couldn't make it. I was so sick. I needed food. I couldn't feed myself. I was just weak. And then he decided that he was coming home early on this particular day. He called me around 3:30 and said, "Oh, work finished early. I'm going to go home." And I'll tell you, this is just my God honest truth. I said, "He's coming home, and if he sees me, I'm in the bed." I got up and I got dressed and I started heading towards the clinic. But I knew it was too late for me to show up to the clinic because it was already 3:30, 4 o'clock, and this clinic is in Stockbridge, and I live in Sonoria, Georgia. So it's a good 50-minute drive.
Mm-hmm.
So now when he's coming home and I'm talking to him on the phone, he's like, "Oh, are you headed to the clinic?" I said, "Yeah, I'm headed to the clinic. I'm headed to Stockbridge." And I hadn't eaten. So in my mind, I was like, there's a restaurant near there, and I'm going to go to the restaurant that I usually go to when I get off work, or when I take lunch, I go to this restaurant. And that's what I did. I drove directly to the restaurant. And I prayed that day and I said, "Lord, I'm okay." I said, "If you just take me, if you would, I can't do it anymore." I said, "I'm okay. You've done so much for me. I've already prepared my girls. I've imparted so much wisdom on them." And I prayed this. I said, "The only thing I would love is for you to send someone to my husband who has a heart for him, who has a heart for you, who would love him." And I made a joke to God and I said, "And don't let nobody come in here and use up all my stuff." Messing with my diamonds and my perfumes and messing up all we done built together. Just send somebody who really love him. Don't send nobody in here that's gonna take all my stuff. And I made
Send a God-fearing woman with a heart for God, because see, if she's that, she's going to be respectful. She's not coming for the diamond. She's coming because she has a heart for your husband. But he knew he was going to leave you here with him, so he wasn't paying any attention to any of that stuff you were talking about. You told me that story when we met, and I thought it was so funny. And you spoke also in depth about the state of mind that you were in, and that you prayed that prayer because you said you were talking to your sister. I think you said to me.
I did. You remember.
And that you were preparing her without her knowing that you were.
I was.
For you leaving.
I started reminiscing about songs that she's much old. She's probably 10 or 11 years older than me, but my dear sister, I have a whole bunch of them, but she's one that I'm close to. And I started singing old school songs, Mr. Big Stuff and all these old songs. And she's like so excited, like, "You were 8 years old. Do you remember that song?" I said, "Remember you used to let me dance on your feet? You would let me stand on your feet and you would let me dance." She said, "I can't believe." And I was really trying to prepare her because I felt like I was prepared. Right. And I had done what God had asked me to do. And I was okay. I was tired though. I was tired.
And that's when you got the call.
Yes. Well, eventually when I did talk to when my husband was on the phone, he said, "Well, are you going to the clinic?" I did eventually say to him, "Well, it's a little late to go. I was going to go, but now I'm going to go just get something to eat." Because he knows I'm particular about the type of food I like. I'll drive an hour and a half to get what I like. Always been me. Mm-hmm. I like a lot of what I like and I stick to what's good. Right. So I said, "Well, I'm just going to go to Poppy's. It's a Cuban restaurant that's over there. So I'm just going to do that. And then I'll come back." So I was doing the reminiscing on the phone with my sister, and these people in this restaurant knows me because when I go places, I build these relationships. So they see me coming in and I had a mojito. Mm-hmm. And I'm a lightweight. So I said, "Let me have another one." Because I was thinking, I'm going to go out right. I'm going to be nice and smooth.
And mellow and happy.
So I said, "Let me have another one." And she said, "Mommy," they say that to you. She said, "You want another one?" Because I never do two. I said,
Right.
yeah, let me have another one. Well, I really couldn't drink it. When I got it and she kept coming back, she said, no good, huh? I said, no, I couldn't really drink it. But then in the middle of that, he called me. And at first, the clinic called me. Now, one thing about being on the transplant list, when they tell you that it's your annual appointment, you go and you go through all of this stuff that they want to do. Then they make you go to all of these appointments. You got to get a chest x-ray. You got to get an MRI. You got to go talk to the psychiatrist again. And you have to make all these appointments. And so sometimes they don't give you time because the committee might meet again in the next 30 days. And you didn't get a chance to get into the doctor to all of these appointments. And they're calling you. And what they do is they take you off the transplant list.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. It happened to me. That's why I was just like, I'm tired. I can't do it anymore. They drop you off the list. If you didn't get in all of those things that they asked you to get in, they send you a letter and say, you've been removed from the list. And when you get all of this stuff into us, we'll meet again. So if a kidney comes in that matches you in between that time, you don't get it. So they used to stress me out sometimes. So, you know, me, I'm always being myself. Every space that I'm in at church, people know who I am. At my job. You know, some places you have to curb it a little bit because I'm full of who I am and I'm comfortable in it. And it fits well in some spaces, in some spaces it doesn't. So
That's all of us that are loquacious. When you're
yes,
loquacious, you have to, we talked about that last night. You have to kind of read the room and bring it down.
because everybody can't, it's not your
They
cup of
can't
tea.
handle
You're
it.
not their cup. So I'm thinking to myself, like, so when they would call me and they would stress me out, I would say stuff to them like, I'm gonna need more than a kidney transplant. If y'all keep stressing me out, I'm gonna need a heart transplant because you're gonna give me a heart attack. You know, I would say, and they would say, I was Miss Nichols at the time because I wasn't married. They would say, Miss Nichols. I said, no, you guys act like I can make Kaiser do all of these appointments. Just give me time. You see that every time you ask me to do it, I do it. So stop calling me. Don't call me. I'll tell you when I'm ready. And I would do that to them. And they would accept me because they knew me. I'm motherly. I bring food. You know, I have a heart of gold. So if you can take the worst of me, the best of me is yours to have. Right. And you deserve it. So they know me. And so when I saw the phone ring first, it was them. But I was still on the phone with my sister having my moment. And I was like, ooh, if they calling me at 8 o'clock tonight to ask me about some test, they about to get told. Because I was just in here with y'all. I just had my appointment on the 9th. It's the 25th. So I seen it come up, and that's the thought that went in my mind. Ooh, when I finish off this phone with my sister, I'm gonna call them back because they're about to get it. Then the phone clicked again, and it was my husband. And I said to my sister, that's my husband calling now. So let me answer it. And we said, love you, and did what we did, and I got off. Then he said, where are you at? And that was an odd question because I'm like, I just talked to him and he knows I'm at this restaurant. So that was just odd. Like, where are you? You know, when your husband says it like that, you're like, what's going on? I said, I'm at the restaurant. I'm actually in my car now, getting ready to head back home. He said, I got these people on the other line. Now, this is the funny part. We live in the country. So when you drive and you get close to my house, we live on
You
back
have no
roads where
cell.
there's no reception. He said, I'm pulled over in a church parking lot because these people called me. And if I keep driving, I'm going to lose the call. They said they have a kidney for you. And I was like, what? I was about to tell these people off. God is good.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. I remember you telling me that story the night that we met because it was like I had known you. It was just kind of special that way. It happens in my life. That is the way it happens. And I remember you saying that you were so not wanting to believe it in a way that because it was you and another person, and you had to wait on the second call for it to be confirmed that it was you. And I was thinking about when you suffer with something so long, because I suffered with Crohn's disease for 8 years. And when God finally gave me my healing, you're afraid in some sense to fully embrace it right away because you've suffered for a length of time. And it's not that you want to doubt God, it's the humanness of you that it's a form of protection, I think. Not to just go head first in. I realized how much better I was feeling when I got off of the Remicade, when I got off of the Pentessa, eventually, and went straight full-fledged with the herbal therapy regimen that I was on and the diet adjustments. But 6 months in, I felt like a new person. I felt like I had not felt in 8 years of struggling with that. And I was like, until I went to the doctor and they did the colonoscopy and the upper GI and told me that I was totally healed inside and asked me what had I done, it's when it began to kind of process in my mind that I was truly healed, even though I spoke it out of my mouth constantly. And even though I believed in God and knowing that he could do anything, it's almost like the trauma of what you develop when you're suffering with whatever it is that you have, if that makes sense. That's what's so wonderful about you telling your story and adding overcoming trauma, because there were many types of trauma throughout this book that you went through and overcame. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we don't realize the residue of how it lingers with us. And I think that's how sometimes we get into relationships. And that was so interesting in that last part about your marriage, perched, how you talked about, the healing that needs to occur when you've gone through things in that you both can bring into marriage. And when you rush into it, you don't give yourself time to really know the person and realize who really, truly it is that you're marrying. Mm-hmm. And how you have to heal together. But that's just one part of the things that you disclosed in here. It's amazing. Your story is truly amazing.
Thank you so much. And I just want to piggyback on one of the things you said when you talk about when you come into your healing. So, it's like body dysmorphia, like people who are really heavy and they lost a lot of weight. They will commonly go and buy clothes that are still too big for a really long time because they can't wrap their mind around, they can't see themselves yet. It takes a little while before you can actually see yourself. And also suffering becomes a part of your fiber mm-hmm. of your body. It becomes a part of the fiber of who you are. Mm-hmm. So you can have an adjustment disorder that goes either way. You can have an adjustment disorder to healing or an adjustment disorder to suffering. So let me give you an example. After I had the transplant, so me, let me start here. I'm one of the people in my family that a lot of people come to me, right? They come to me for advice. I minister, that I'm an ordained minister. I coach, I mentor. So people come to me a lot for whatever it is. I'm a prayer warrior. I'm an intercessor. So people come, the other night, you said something to me and I said, you want to pray? I can call you right now. And I just went into praying because it's natural for me. Right.
Right.
And all of a sudden, when I had known for 19 years, I said, God is going to give me a kidney. I'm standing on it. I believe it. And I'm going to do my happy dance. This day, I'm going to do my happy dance. Yet when God told me I had a kidney, I didn't have a happy dance.
Right.
I had doubt. But guess what? The faith that you live out, it's contagious and it gets on to people. So when people say you will be the only Bible some people read and people will know God and begin to love God based on what they see him do in your life, if people see that God is always putting a ram in the bush, they start saying, I wonder about this God she talks about all the time. So what happened was my husband, who believes God and believes in God, is a faithful man of God, but is not a person who prays, because that's not for everybody. Everyone is not comfortable shouting out loud or praying. Some people are just silent prayers, and that's cool. Mm-hmm. My husband, who had been watching me walk out this faith, he started praying. And it was shocking. I was like, oh, wow. And even before they took me, because again, they had said, well, someone else wants might have the kidney before you. So me, I'm feisty. That's who I am. It's, one thing about healing is you embrace your whole self. That's the beautiful thing about healing. You don't try to call yourself something else. You call a thing a thing.
Right.
And me, I'm feisty. It's a part of who I am. Doesn't mean I'm mean. I'm not harsh. I'm just feisty. I'm willing to fight the battle for myself and for others. So I said, why would they even tell me they have a kidney if they want to tell me it's for somebody else? They shouldn't even told me that. So mind you, I was, I had a mojito and a half down. So I had a mojito and a half down. So by the time I got home, he's got the suitcase and he's trying to put all this stuff in it. Now I had a suitcase packed for 10 years until I just said, I'm not doing that anymore. I can't do this. When the time comes, I'll do it. And he said, get your stuff together. And I said, no, I'm not. because they should never told me that. I'm not going to let them let me down. And he was just packing my suitcase. So his faith was standing for me, the one who was always praying for everybody. And I did this. I said, I want to call mama. That's his mother, because my mother's passed on. And when I got on the phone with her, I was just crying and crying. And she said, baby, what are you crying about? This is a good thing. Why are you crying? And I said these words to her. I said, what if I don't make it? Who's going to take care of him? Because it's her son. Nobody loves him like me but her and God. So I said, what if I don't make it? Who's going to take care of him? And she said, you don't have to worry about that. She said, but I was able to be weak for a moment. And that's really important in your healing process and your healing journey.
And it's important to pick your village. Like you point out in a lot of your teaching, who's holding your ladder. You have to be intentional about who's holding your ladder, because when you are that person that's holding everyone else's ladder, there has to be at least one. And if you're blessed, two.
Yes. Really blessed.
If you're really, really, really blessed, that will hold your ladder, because this flesh and human side of us coexists with our spirit.
Absolutely.
And those moments have to occur because we are indeed flesh. And sometimes when you're always that one that is holding the ladder for everyone else, no one thinks that you should need your ladder held sometimes. That's why I said you got to have one, and you're really, really blessed if you have two. So someone had to hold your ladder at that moment. Something that you had struggled with, lived with, dealt with. Being sick is not for the faint of heart. And when you have a long-term debilitating disease, I made it not quite half as long as you did. 8 years for suffering with Crohn's, but I know what it is to wake up at 27 years old and be too weak to get up and dress myself. My then husband would go to work. I would be laying in that same spot when he got back. No food. The only thing that I had the strength to do was to go to the restroom and come back and get in the bed. I was so weak. My hemoglobin, you being a medical professional, knows it was 4 a couple of times. So I had blood transfusions. Going to the hospital on the weekend was a normal occurrence in our house, because I would get into those violent episodes of constant regurgitation and diarrhea, and I would dehydrate, and I would have to go get fluids. I'm just sick, violently sick.
Yes. Chronic disease is funny like that, because you're still looking like this most of the time.
I was.
And you can be at work one day, or be with your family or your friends, or even your husband. You'd be one day and you're perfectly fine. And then the next day, you're not perfectly fine. You don't want to take them up and down on this roller coaster.
So
the funny part about having a village, though, or about choosing who's going to hold your ladder, the first thing is you have to let someone hold it.
You do.
Because when you are used to doing everything on your own, it's actually a trauma response to not let people help you, or to not know how to let people help you. It's a trauma response.
Guilty.
If you've had people let you down a lot, or you've had people disappoint you a lot, or abandon you in certain situations, there's holes there. And you fill that hole up with all of the stuff of yourself that you can do for yourself.
That's right.
That you don't have to experience the trauma or be re-traumatized with being disappointed or being rejected or people leaving and you being abandoned. So it's a trauma response to say, no, I don't really ask anybody.
I got it.
But the thing is that when when the word says it's a blessing to be a blessing, what you do is, when you are a strong person and people see you as that, and they know that, when you allow people into that space to help you, they grow astronomically, because they feel like they've helped someone who helps everybody else. So you are a blessing to them, to allow them to help you. It changes people when you let them in and they look at you as this person, because you never know how people see you. You may see yourself as normal or just an average person, but some people see you as you said, God adding super to that natural, and like this supernatural person that God, some people really believe that you or me, who are prayer warriors, hear from God in a different way. They'll say, I'm going to ask Shelby to pray. I'm going to ask Joanne because she knows God. They really, look at you like that. So when you allow the door to open for those people to be of service to you, you really do bless people. So you really have to let go of the reins and be able to say, okay, I need help with this.
I do.
I do too. It's
I
been a
can-
journey getting there, but I do.
I can suffer in silence very well and look just like this. And no one has any idea the severity of what's going on now. I'm constantly praying. I'm constantly talking to God. I'm constantly listening for him. And I don't know, I think going through the things that I've been through in life has established this in me. And I can be in the middle of the worst storm in my life and still help others through the grace of God. I think it is a way of coping and distraction, if that makes sense.
Well, one of the best ways to get through your own trauma is to reach out and help someone else. That is, or just not even trauma, just if you're going through something, a particular difficult time or anything like that. One of the best things to do to get your mind off of it is to be of service and make yourself useful. So being useful to other people is a way for you to reimagine yourself when you're going through something. So you're going through something, you feel weak, you feel vulnerable, you feel fear, you feel all of the things that have to do with a disappointment or a challenge or an obstacle. And it makes you withdraw into yourself. But somehow, when you start helping someone else, you can reimagine yourself as, if I can help them now, all of a sudden I can see my way through my own problem because you've stepped away from it. And now you can look at it from a different perspective because you've switched gears to help someone else. And that's why it's important when you talk about who's holding your ladder in this next conference coming up. The first one I did was this year, and it was called A Whole Well You, Health, Wealth, and Wellness, and Overcoming Trauma. And we talked about physical, emotional, mental health, connecting the dots through. A lot of people don't know what it is to be well. They think self-care activities is wellness. You use self-care activities to be well, right? And wellness is a lifestyle that you practice through self-care. And so we talked about clarifying those things and how you can have different aspects of health. And we connected the dots between wealth and your finances, because we know that poor finances break up marriages. It causes depression, it causes people to drink, suicide, and all of these things. So we connected the dots between those things and trauma, right? But what I didn't want to do, and it was an all women's conference, it was a great outcome. It was more than I ever thought it could be. And it was birthed from getting this kidney, because I have been planning to die, Shelby. I've been planning that for my children. We're in an age of Instagram and Facebook where people talk about wealth and legacy and all of that. Let me tell you, your girl's been doing that for a long time. Because in 2004, when they told me that it was going to end, yes, I've had business. It's hard to explain it to people because sometimes you seem like you're bragging or you're a liar. It just doesn't seem real, all the things that I've done out of fear of dying too young, that my girls, my babies that I loved and adored, that they would be here without me and somebody wouldn't take care of them, or they would struggle because the lifestyle that I had created for myself and them, someone taking them might not be able to keep that up. So I worked my tail off. And yes, I've been a serial entrepreneur for a very long time. So this new Instagram stage talking about wealth and legacy, that's been something I've been doing for a long time. It's nice to have it here and hear a lot of people talking about it. But sometimes we can't even connect the dots to that, because if emotionally you're not able to stabilize your emotions and process problems and issues, if you're not able to have clarity of thoughts and get mental clarity, it will keep you from being able to make good financial decisions. So when people can't see how wealth would have to do with your emotional health, well, because you can't see yourself as well enough when you're emotionally unstable or emotionally wounded, you can't see past that. So you even have some people in the church who have incredible gifts, right? Not skill, not talent.
Yes.
Skill is something you could teach your 7-year-old. I could teach my 7-year-old how to do an IV. My 7-year-old or 6-year-old grandchild, I could teach her how to do an IV. It's a skill. Talented is something that you grow in because you're born with the talent. And if you practice it, like piano players who are talented, they're born with the gift. and then they practice and they become talented at it. But a gift comes from God.
Mm-hmm.
Gifts come directly from God. And there are some people who have a high level of gifting, but it's in the graveyard because of emotional instability and lack of mental clarity for mental health issues and for emotional issues. So we see people never reach their full potential, and you have graveyards full of talent because people can't get over the emotional trauma and the mental health issues that encompasses that. And so they never reach their full potential. So if we could just tap into that, that would be, for me, I call it a crusade for healing. That's what this conference was about, and even this next one. So the first one was all women. But what I said, and we had this conversation last night, Shelby, I said, I'm not giving parties every year for women to dress up and look cute to look at each other. I'm not doing that. We got to leave here different every time.
And men need healing, because I was thinking as you were talking, knowing your story. I have friends, I have people that I have met. We all have a story. But when children grow up in difficult circumstances with instability, without having parents that provide a stable environment, so often the trauma, for lack of a better term, of not having what you need when you're a kid lingers in them as adults. And they self-medicate through drinking, through making bad financial decisions. They don't reach their full potential of the gifting that God has given them, talents or skills.
Absolutely.
And they end up in a vicious generational curse of cycle of what they come from. So, and that was another thing that was so baffling to me in your story, the wherewithal and the wisdom that you had to see surpass your circumstances. And it wasn't because it was something that you were exposed to or saw growing up. So to say that you have a history of wealth building or the wherewithal or the foresight to want to be an entrepreneur, all of that had to come from you wanting to be different and do better. That had to be innate in the relationship that you were building with God, or something inside of you. Because, and I have a friend, she says to me, even in her home, she had a very strong mom, but her dad was flaky, which did not lend the stability in the home that was needed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But her mother always instilled in them that we may have little, but this is our buckhead. We may be near Bankhead, but this is our buckhead. Mm-hmm. And we need to treat it as such, no matter how ill repair or whatever it is, or the lack. We need
what we have.
And there's another world out there. We may not have the money to see it or know exactly what it is, but there's something out there better. And it kept her driven to go and find and seek. First, starting with keeping her grades good, so she could have the opportunity to experience, because sometimes children that are underprivileged, their intellectual talent is what gets them out. Mm-hmm. If they have the foresight and the determination to push and follow through with it. I have mm-hmm. several friends that have that story. Their intellect got them out, and they kept going. But to me, and I'd read something too after I got off the phone with you last night that talked about the very thing that you're talking about, with wholeness, healing, wellness, trauma, all of that being a lifestyle, talking about the things that we hold inside and how not only does it handicap us outwardly, but that it attacks our health. Because we were not made to be unbalanced. And in the midst of holding anger, unforgiveness, and it paralleled, and you can speak to this as a medical professional as well as an ordained minister. It paralleled with whatever the emotion was or whatever you were dealing with, paralleled with the area of the body that was attacked, whether it was the heart, the liver, the kidney. I think it spoke about the heart and the kidney being attacked when you live in constant anxiety and fear. Any validity to that? Or
yes, absolutely. So, I do a lot of research about adverse childhood experiences, ACE, mm-hmm. and we did that at our first conference this year. And there's lots of research that shows that when children, especially starting at a young age, before the age of 5, most children are who they're going to be by the time they're 5 years old.
Mhm.
So before the age of 5, if you go without food, clothing, shelter, basic needs, if you lack, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. On the bottom of it, the best thing you need is safety. So if you go without all of these things, there's research that shows it actually changes your DNA. And why is that? Is because when you're anxious, you have the fight, flight, or freeze mode, right? So fight or flight is like a cardiovascular reaction, or reaction of your cardiovascular system, where your heart rate, really your whole body, not your cardiovascular, but you get stronger, you're able to do more. It's like when people say, I had an adrenaline rush. Well, all of these things happen when you have to fight or flight, which is run, right? However, that is supposed to be a homeostatic mechanism where it goes up and it's supposed to come back down. Your body is homeostasis means as an even state. So your body's supposed to fluctuate when it needs to and then come back to this even state. However, if you stay in the fight or flight, then your blood pressure is going to be elevated all the time. You're always going to have blood rushing. You're going to have these heightened senses, and that actually changes your DNA. So there is research that shows people who tend to smoke cigarettes at an early age, people who suffer from obesity, who have drug addiction, who have lung disease, and different medical conditions, they can trace it back. That's not to say that everyone who has those conditions had adverse childhood experiences.
Right.
So when you talk about the physical aspect of it from a medical perspective, those things do have validity, and there is research to show. Even we know now as an adult, if you stay upset all the time and you stay stressed out all the time, your blood pressure is going to be high. The reason why you see it in the kidneys and the heart is because the blood pressure directly affects the kidneys, the heart, right? But when you talk about it on a spiritual perspective, because we spoke about this last night, when we were on the phone. And when you say, well, there must have been something inside of you. So this is it. There's something inside of all of us because God breathed his breath, right? And we talked about this last night. We have 3 parts of us. We have our physical being. It grows as we grow. We get older. Things that looked nice and shapely when you were younger, now they're gravity to the ground, right? But because your body is going to naturally age with time, it's the natural aspect of life. And then you have the Spirit of God that was breathed into you. It stays young forever. It never ages. It's the same age that the day God breathed it into you and gave lungs and gave breath into you. Your mom helped God. Your parents say all the time, I gave you life. No, they didn't. They gave you birth. Right. They assisted God in giving life, because if they gave you life, you would never see a woman coming home with a child that, like a stillborn. That would never happen because God decides life. So your spirit stays the same age forever. Your soul, that is something different. That is fed by your environment. It's fed by what people say to you. It's fed by what you see every day. It's fed by your eye gates, what you allow to see yourself to see. It's fed by your ear gates, right? So your thoughts, your will, your emotions, that is your soul. And sometimes it doesn't grow up or it stays sick. It's something called sick soul syndrome. So when you said there was something inside of you, there's something inside of all of us. It's a matter of you solicit it.
That's right.
Right. So it's a rebellion against God when people have too much pride. Right. We talked about this last night. They don't know it's that. But when you have so much pride that you don't want to say, Lord, I'm hurting. He knows already. He wants you to come to him. Right. He wants you to come to him. And when you don't have the wherewithal, or you are still angry with God, that you're so angry that you're still mad. You're still saying, why did you allow, if there's a God, why did he allow me to be abandoned? Why did he allow someone to hit on me and beat me like that? You're still angry. So you don't open up the door for the Holy Spirit. So, we could give sin offerings we can give it to the devil or to God. That's how that goes. You can make a sin offering to God. And how do you do that? You go and you confess your sins. You confess with your mouth and you say, Lord, this is what I've done. And that's how you get healed from sin. And that's how you overcome sin. Or you can open up the door to the enemy and give a sin offering to the enemy. And that is through bitterness, through anger, unforgiveness. So you're going to decide who you're going to offer that sin offering to.
Right.
So that's the thing that was inside, is the Holy Spirit touting me.
But you had a part in that.
Absolutely.
Because as you said, it's in all of us. So we have a choice to make, because some kids have all the opportunities in the world and they make the choices to be addicted to drugs or to do a life of crime.
Absolutely.
And some have no advantages and they turn out to be a doctor, an ordained minister, an author, a transplant recipient. They have all types of things going on. So we, as we talked about last night, he gives us free will.
Yeah.
That's even to choose him. The Holy
Yeah.
Spirit is definitely a gentleman. So he doesn't force anything. He gives us what we need, and we make the choices of who we spend lives around, whether we get caught in depression and stay there, whether we get caught in survivor's remorse and stay there.
Yes.
Or whatever the tool is that Satan uses to not allow us to become all that he's created us to be. It is truly a choice. It may not seem simple.
It is.
But it is. It's truly a choice of who you spend your life around, who's holding your ladder, because we need each other. We need those things that we see to, as you said with your husband, he displayed the faith that you had always lived and spoke at the time that you were in your humanness, because it was you, it was your situation. What you had prayed for 19 years was finally coming to fruition, and you were a little behind with the processing of it, just a little bit. So he stood in the gap for you.
Yes.
He spoke what you had always spoken. He prayed what you noticed yourself was always you, but he stepped up. Mm-hmm. So you chose that caliber and character of man to be your mate. Mm-hmm. What if you had not?
Right.
That's why I said it always boils down to a choice.
It does. It does. And you have to continue to make these choices, right? Because for me, as I said from the beginning, I was feisty. When you read my book, you hear me saying this, and I'm always very transparent about this, because I believe that as long as you have breath in your lungs, you have air, you're still living, that you wake up every day, that there's still process, that God still has something more. So for me, I believe you have to continue to make choices. And as I said from the beginning, I'm feisty. So when you ask what it was inside of me, I can tell you, and I wrote this in my book, I think I did, because I'm on my second book now. And I told you last night.
I can tell you if you wrote it. Go ahead.
I confuse the two of them. My imagination, I lived in a lot. I lived in my imagination. You know, when I was younger and I was stealing to eat and I was stealing clothes to put on my back, and I had a lot of shame and I had a lot of guilt. So I used to imagine, on one of these days, I'm going to eat in the nicest restaurants. I'm going to wear the nicest clothes, and I will pay. Here. Okay, because I told you last night, I said I was talking to somebody and I was trying to tell them something that I'm writing now, and they said, I read it. And I was like, oh. They did? Well,
what you talked about was kind of what we've spoken about today, that when your life transitioned out of you having to steal for food or steal for clothing or feeling that was your lifestyle, we'll say it that way, that when you didn't have to anymore, you had to watch yourself to make sure that when you became an RN, that you did not carry that mindset into your new circumstances, but you were conscious about that. I have a friend that's a recovered drug addict, and she says all the time that people can go to AA or NA and do all of that, but until they change the drug addict mindset, that even if in their sobriety, if you talk to them or are you around them, they still act like a drug addict.
Well, we talked about this last night too, because I said to you last night that I'm at the place now because my healed version of me needs something different than the person who had all the holes. Right. So some people need you to stay in your broken place because they identify with that. So that's why I say in my book, in that book now, I know I say this in that book because I talk a lot about my personable stuff, even as I'm older now with my children and things I went through with, seeing things happen with my children. And it's clearly in the book, I talk about one of my daughters and both my daughters, but I talk about the different issues and things that I've dealt with them. And I always want to make this clear is that what I accept and what I approve is different.
Right.
So even I talk about my marriage and being married and growing and coming into a marriage and not really realizing that we think about PTSD, we think about it with veterans only, or people who've been in the military. We don't think about it for ourselves. And then coming into a marriage and getting triggered and realizing I had PTSD. What I do say in that book, and I know for sure that I say this, is that I will continue to make decisions for myself, because what's good for you today, that worked for you today,
Well,
your
not
healed
to,
self, it may not be good for. And you got to be okay with that. You can't be saying, well, I had told all these people that this was good and I don't want to. You have to be able to be honest with yourself,
I
because
changed
you're
my
only as sick
mind.
as the secrets you keep.
That's it. And as long as it's a secret, it has control of you.
It's a sin offering to the devil is what it is.
And
It's
when
a sin
you
offering.
expose it, you are free.
So I will continue as the time goes by. I will always, as I march through this time, as long as God decides that I'm going to be on this side, still working kingdom business, because I came from heaven and I'm going back. We all came from there. Some of us understand that and know it, and some of us don't know it. I know where I came from. I came from heaven and I'll go back home. But while I'm here on this side, I will always make the decision that's best for myself. I will always consider the people I love and consider how they feel, what they need. But ultimately, I will never get to the other side and be fully known by God and say, well, there are still gifts left in me, or there's still stuff that I know that I should have done, but I didn't do it because of somebody else. I will always make the decision that's going to be best for me, with a job, with my children, with my marriage, with my relationships with people, with my agency over myself. I will walk away from something in a minute, a job that pays me 7 figures. If it starts taking away my peace or my agency, or hindering me in any kind of way, because now I have the trust and faith that I need to know that I can look back and say, geez, those things that I thought I would never get over, not only did God bring me through it, he blessed me on the other side of it. It's the same God. So I don't attach my happiness or my joy with people, places, and things, because I don't think that God puts people or places and things that's going to be the only route to you finding your joy. If he should remove a job, he's got something else for you. If he should remove a person from your life, he's got something else for you. And they're all okay, because it's never really mistakes. It's all just lessons. You grow and you learn from them.
Right.
So for me, going forward was always, because in my mind, the imagination, I still have that big imagination. I still think that the Whole Well You wellness organization, that I'm going to be on this crusade for healing. And there are going to be people all over the world who are saying, hey, I got over my trauma. I didn't know this was trauma. Now my grandmama is over her trauma because we've been going to counseling. And that's what I see. So I still have a huge imagination and believe in God that he could use this young girl from the projects to help other people take the pain that has plagued them and turn it into a power to change the world. And even if that world is your family or your one person, it's still the world that you're living in, and you only need to make the change for one person.
That's right. That's very true. And I believe that he can and that he will, because this is something that I've spoken about in several different stories that have been told on Safe Space. Dr. Francis, that's a psychologist here, and she ranges from Jamaica and suffered with abandonment issues because her father abandoned their family. Talks about, she wrote a book that talks about the way abandonment affects children, because that's her experience. And she talked about the PTSD that you just alluded to, that even we as Black Americans experience, that's been passed down. And because of the American experience that we have lived, and the enslavement. And then I had a disabled veteran, I think she's retired from the military, that came on to talk about her new ministry that is based in the PTSD realm. And she has those letters for her organization that stand for discipleship and serving the community. But she was a victim of PTSD. And I think we all suffer from different variations of it, whether it's rooted in disappointment or things that happened in our childhood, abandonment issues, or whatever it may be. I think it is applicable to most people's lives in one way or another, but we don't recognize it because we walk around broken and not healed. And we, as the Black community, have not had mental health afforded to us, and then it was stigmatized.
Absolutely.
And not realizing that if your heart can get sick, your brain can get sick, your emotions can get sick. These things that we go through attach themselves to us, and they make up a large part of how we respond, how we're triggered, and it never changes. It just becomes as identifiable with who we are, and it's not. It's not who we are. It's what happened to us that we are wearing and carrying with us. So it is so important that we are healed. So in us wrapping up, tell us about the new book that's coming. Tell us about how people can reach you, where they can find this book, and the dates of the up and coming Whole Wellness Conference, and anything else you'd like to tell us.
Oh, great. Okay, so the conference coming up, it is called Who's Holding Your Ladder? It's an extension of the second part of a Whole Well You conference. It is April 26th in Hollywood, Florida. It is going to be 2 days, but the conference is the 26th. Friday night, we have a Western style meet and greet. We always like to have a little fun, so you can come with your cowboy or cowgirl hat. And on Friday, we will have a Western meet and greet. On Saturday, we have the conference. This conference is going to have always somebody to be there to talk about healing. Yours truly, Shelby Arrington, will be one of our speakers to talk about healing. But then we have other people that are going to be there to talk about credit repair, and not just credit repair, not your average, I can get your score to a place. Really making you understand how to leverage, protect, and use your credit, right? And making you understand and see the importance of it. How to take the money that you're already working and make it work for you.
Right.
Life insurance policies. We say we can't afford it, but we can't afford to be without it. But we need to understand it a little bit better. How does it work for us when we're living? We can create policies that every time we pay it, it's building a cash flow for us so that we can borrow from it. Pay it back. We can use it to invest. Real estate investors, how did they use real estate to gain their wealth? You know, all of these different things to connect the dots to, okay, we're talking about health, wealth, and wellness. How do we start to build that? Because when we use the word wealthy, we don't associate it with ourselves. We think it's other people, but we have enough right now where we are to create that. So that's where that is going to happen. Again, Hollywood, Florida. It's called Suite 2. It's going to be beautiful. It'll be Saturday, April 26th, and you can get your tickets on wholewellyouconference.com. The next book coming up is actually the first book that I wrote. I didn't put it out at the time because my mom was alive and my ex-husband was alive, and there was some fear and guilt, and I wasn't ready to tell that story. I still was dealing with a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, but I wrote it in 2004. It was cathartic for me then because writing it helped me not to be so angry, because I was very angry when I was younger. So now that book is called Finding Hope, How My Wings Got Broke. So it's a bit of the story that you have now, which has a lot of my current self in it. This is the little girl. We're coming from the little girl leading up to the book you have. You have a synopsis of the little girl, but this really goes into a lot of details. So it was a lot for me to write this. Took a lot of transparency, a lot of vulnerability, but I can tell you the healing has taken place. So if people want to reach me, I do have drjoannechestnut.com as my personal website. You can also send me messages on, and we have info@wholewellyou.com. That is also my email. So you can send me an email if you want to be private. But again, even if you go on wholewellyouconference.com, there's a chat there, and you can ask questions, and it will send me an email to the Whole Well You site. Again, I'm an ordained minister, so I have Crossing the Jordan with Grace is my ministry. I'm doing my first wedding coming up on January 3rd. I'm marrying my first couple out of state. I've done a few funerals, and I do a lot of ministering to people and, you know, some marriage counseling and that kind of stuff, but I'm doing my actual first wedding. So I'm excited about that. So that is crossingthejordanwithgrace.org. What else? I have a platform for nursing classes. It's called Crossing the Jordan Education and Consultant. We have a whole platform there available for nurses who are trying to get into nursing school and need to have some, content help, anatomy, physiology. And for those who are getting out, who want to pass their boards, it is a platform for them. The reason why I did that is because nursing itself as a career changed the trajectory of my life and helped me to walk away from some of those other things that I couldn't see myself out of. So I want to help other nurses who are aspiring to be nurses. It's truly been a good career to me, and it has changed the trajectory of my life. So all of the things that I'm involved with, they all connect back to things I wish someone would have done for me.
Got it. I got it. I got it. And all of this information will be in the credits of the show once it's posted. So all of her websites, and last but not least, if you need to contact her, you missed it and you don't see it in the credits, which I know it will be, LaShonda is excellent with all of that. You can reach out to me on any of my platforms. All of them are Safe Space with Shelby Arrington, and I will make sure that you are in direct contact with Dr. Joanne Chestnut. This has been such a pleasure, and meeting you, I know, was totally ordained by God. I am looking so forward to being in Hollywood, Florida. It is so amazing that this is full circle for me. So this is another confirmation that I know that it is God. I did a conference with some friends back in around 2012. It was advertised in then what was Upscale magazine called A Gathering of Women. And it was held in Hollywood, Florida at the Plantation Renaissance there.
Okay.
And for this to be, I've done some speaking at some other events, but this by far is going to be the largest one that God has blessed me with the ability to speak at. And for it to be in Hollywood, I see him in it and in you. So I want to thank you for extending me the invitation and the opportunity. And I know that he is going to be just, because I'm going to spend my time praying and seeking after him to make sure that the message that is for your audience that I have been chosen to deliver will be just that, from him, not from me. That is most important for me to do. I'm honored to be chosen to be the conduit in which he speaks to the group that will be there.
Yes. Thank
you again for taking out time of your busy schedule, because I know you also, you've been to Emory today, haven't you?
I've been working. I love my job. I love what I do. I love all of what I do. So I can't do anything I don't love to do. So yes, I have been working today diligently because I like to push out good products. I really do.
Well, I thank you for your time and for blessing Safe Space, for telling your story, giving your perspective on the things that we've discussed. I do believe that it will meet someone at their place of need. And what all I want to do, which you've touched on in many ways tonight, is to let people know we fall short. We are human. Do not live in condemnation. That is a lie from the pit of hell. Our God wants us. He's waiting for us. All you have to do is talk to him. And no matter where you are, what you've done, what you're dealing with, what you're struggling with, he is the answer. There's always hope as long as he's alive. And he is indeed alive. He will help you with anything. He will send the helpers, your destiny helpers. All you have to do is have a little faith, just a little bit, and take the first step. And you don't have to know the whole plan.
Absolutely.
You don't have to know anything, but that the end result is going to be that you're going to be delivered whole, healthy, and healed. And he will fill in the blank with you trying. This woman is a living testimony. And that being said, I encourage you to go online and buy this book and read her story.
It is also in Barnes and Nobles, and you can just Google it. It's not just Amazon. You can get it from other stores and platforms as well. So yes, please, if you already brought the book or bought it, I should say, please go on Amazon and put a review for me, because I did win the International Impact Book of the Year. So I'm going to be having that. Yes, not the Book of the Year. It's called the International Impact Book Award. So I won that for 2024. I will be in Phoenix, Arizona on the 22nd of February getting that award. All of my reviews help on Amazon. So if you got the book or you get it, please go write a review. Thank you so much, Shelby. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Thank you so much for coming by Safe Space, gracing us with your knowledge, your spirit, your kindness, and your humility. We look so forward to working with you in the future. And thank
Yes.
you all for listening tonight. I hope you have been blessed. I know I have been. And we'll be back next Wednesday. Normally, I do shows. I try to be consistent on the second and the fourth Wednesday of the month. But the fourth Wednesday of the month is our we celebrate our Jesus Christ. So we're going to come back next week with some near and dear people in my life, my ladder holders, and we're going to talk about the gravity and the seriousness of relationships and who we choose to spend our lives with and spend our time around, and how, as Joanne and I have discussed tonight, how it affects you and how it helps you or harms you or lifts you up or brings you down. So you guys will be back next Wednesday on the 18th of December at 8:30 p.m. It's going to be a fun show, but we're going to be candid and naked and unashamed about how we affect one another, how we love one another, and probably how we get on each other's nerves as well. So you guys come back and join us. Thank you again, Dr. Chestnut. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming by and listening to us here. This is Shelby at Safe Space, and we'll see you next week. Bye, Dr. Chestnut.
Bye-bye, Shelby. Take care. Thank you, everyone.